What's good, everybody? I'm Jędrek, he's Sodek, and today we are gonna talk about all the new and wonderful cards from Wilds of Eldraine for both Modern and Pioneer. Let's go. Alrighty, so Wilds of Eldraine, our first standard set in quite a while. We also had, of course, Lord of the Rings for our main format Modern, so it didn't really feel like that much of a downtime, but for people who are not interested in Modern and beyond formats, you actually didn't have any new releases since March or April.
True.
Something like that. So that's traditionally one of the longest periods of inactivity in like new set releases, unless you have a core set. But now it's the second year in a row without a core set. So similarly with Capenna to Dominaria's United, you had like 5 months of break. And we didn't had any modern sets last year, so we actually felt that. And it felt like a really long time without any change. But now it's over. The pre-releases are happening this weekend. And yep, new set is upon us. From what it looks, it's not nearly as powerful as the last Eldraine set, which is a good thing. But I might be wrong here, but I don't think there was much hype around the first Eldraine set as well. I don't think everybody was saying like, oh, those cards will be so broken and everything. The moment they start playing with it, they realize how broken those cards were. But there was very little hype about those cards before we actually got a chance to play with them.
Yeah, and the fact that Oko turned out to be it was in Oko. Oko, it was in
Yes.
this set, right? Yes. Okay. I wanted to be sure. The fact that Oko was like turned out to be extremely powerful and like unbeatable for most formats. Let other really good cards from the old Eldraine set to hide for a bit. For instance, adventure cards, in my opinion, were much better than people think they are. Like people underestimated the fact that you can do 2 things with 1 card, and like once again we get a lot of this type of effects. But I feel that this time Wizards and like the development team thought a lot about it, and it's not like none of adventure cards feels overpowered by enemies. It looks quite well balanced, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if you think about cards that were broken in first Eldraine or very, very strong, we have Oko. We obviously don't have an Oko caliber planeswalker in this set. We have lands with basic types that do something, so Mystic Sanctuary and to a lesser extent the rest of the cycle. We don't have it here. We've had adventures there for the first time, so it's a very similar thing as to when WotC does those things for the first time. Almost every time something is too strong. Like when they did equipments, we had Skull Club. When we had vehicles for the first time, we had Smuggler's Copter. So it makes sense that when we had adventures for the first time, we had Bonecrusher Giant and like Brazen Borrower, those very strong cards. We also have had Once Upon a Time in Eldraine, and we don't have any free spells in this set. So yeah, I think largely we're safe from like super degenerate things. So yeah, like there are, especially for Modern, I don't think there are any cards that will completely revolutionize Modern in this set.
I feel that there are cards that can make bad decks to be a bit better, but we'll talk about it later. And okay, so we can just start talking about this modern card.
Yep. So let's kick it off very appropriately. Number 1 card on our list.
The most impactful card of the set for Modern, in my opinion.
Yes, it's the number 1 card for the number 1 deck in Modern currently, which is not that after all. And it's basically a very slight upgrade to Feign Death and Undying Malice. So it's 1 black mana for an instant with whenever target creature dies this turn, you return it to the battlefield and it comes back tapped with an attached wicked roll to it. Wicked roll is a new type of rolls, are a type of enchantment tokens that are in this set, and they are all auras that get attached to creatures. And for wicked roll, it says an enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and when this enchantment is put into the graveyard, target opponent or each opponent loses 1 life.
Each opponent, of course.
Each opponent loses 1 life. When you have rolls, you can have 1 roll at the time attached to something.
Yeah,
so if you have to attach new roll to it, then the old roll dies. So in theory, if you have ways to infinitely attach wicked roll to something, you can drain your opponent. Not with this card, but if there is some repetitive way to create wicked rolls and attach it to something, then you can, in theory, kill your opponent this way.
So technically, all that changes now is that we get the card that instead of just blinks the creature and returns it tapped, like it works with Grief or Fury or Doughty Walker or whatever, it gets the same plus this extra 1 life loss when it dies later. So
I think this is a good time to talk about rolls a bit in like broader set of things, because like I think there will be a fair amount of uses for rolls as game objects in general, the similar way that blood and tokens and clue tokens are. It's much harder to utilize enchantments in cross synergy sets than artifacts, because so many sets care about artifacts, and there are so many cards that sacrifices artifacts or destroys artifacts or doing something with artifacts, and enchantments are less universal in this, but still there is a good amount of cross set synergies between like sacrificing enchantments or sacrificing tokens,
permanents
in general. So I think we should not underestimate rolls, and my bet would be that if something in this set is much better than it looks, it's something to do with rolls and how you create game objects that can be utilized in some good way with ease. I think that's mostly the main danger. So let's say with this set, that if something turns out to be much better than it looks, then it's something to do with rolls.
Yeah, generally speaking, the cards that create game objects, like for example, I remember Gilded Goose. Like it looked super bad because it was a mana dork that could give you mana only once, unless you have like you wasted time to create another food tokens. But the way to create just more game objects was much better than people think at first about it. And I feel that this can be a similar effect, although I haven't found anything that can repetitively rebuild the rolls. So it's not...
Who knows? I haven't scoured set for commons and uncommons too carefully. And even if I saw something that can repeatedly create rolls, I don't think it was on good rate enough for constructed that it got any attention from me. But we can move on from Not Dead After All, because it's just a very straightforward inclusion to Scam, and move on to a much more exciting card, even if it doesn't show up that often in the future, which is Besiege the Mirror. It's a 4-mana sorcery. I think it's 1 and triple black. It has the new keyword Bargain, and Bargain is a keyword that is basically will appear on any type of cards that are other than lands, I guess. They are enchantments with Bargain, creatures, instant sorceries, and Bargain reads, as you cast this spell, you may sacrifice an artifact, an enchantment, or a token as an additional cost, and then it provides you with extra effects. So it's basically a kicker of sorts, but instead of having like varied kicker costs, every Bargain card has the same kicker cost of sacrifice one of those 3 things that I just mentioned. noted, you can sacrifice rolls to do that because rolls are enchantment and tokens. And the card says search your library for I think any card and put it into your hand, and if you pay the bargain cost.
No. Exile it face down, then shuffle. If the spell was bargained, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
If it's 4 or less, right?
If mana value 4 or less.
Yeah, so
the exiled card into the hand if it wasn't cast this way. So if you bargain, you have an option to cast something you search for. If you found something that's more expensive than 4, or you haven't bargained, you just tutor to hand.
I knew the gist of the card. I just wanted to put it into my hand and then reveal it, which does make sense in Magic rules. So yeah, whatever. Yeah. It's just a sort of powerful combo card, right?
Yeah.
I think it will be
maybe not a combo card, but a card that can increase the consistency of class cannon combo decks. I heard several different options for this card. For instance, all spell strategies like Oops can try to return. The fact is that you cast this without paying its mana cost. It's kind of important with Balustrade Spy and the Vengevine Kill, because you will still be able to cast 2 creatures. So technically, Oops will get just more creatures, and the fact that you have to bargain something isn't the biggest cost, because you have
Pentat Prisms and Talismans and stuff like that.
So that shouldn't be a problem, but the triple black cost can be, and we'll see if this can be solved in any way. There are like other like if you think about an 1-card combo that's for mana. Not without X, for example. Like, don't think about creativity, but if you want to see an exact card and you have another ways to ramp, like this card should be quite good. Like Oops is the obvious example for me, so is Goblin Charbelcher, but you can think about like anything else and it will work just fine.
You can also cast cards with no casting cost with it, like Living End and Crushing Footfall, stuff like that. I don't think any of those cards like is strong enough to be worth the work for it, or it just doesn't fit in the shell. Like
it's hard to create bargain in Living End, for example.
Yes, exactly.
So
I heard people who were very excited about killing people on turn 1 with this card in Legacy. But we are not talking about Legacy here because nobody plays Legacy.
Storm decks.
I feel like Mox Opal, LED, like all those things you can sacrifice. Yep. Then we have Up the Beanstalk, which is a 2 mana enchantment for 1 and a green. And when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. And whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater, you draw a card.
Yes.
So it cantrips on entrance, which is very unusual for this sort of build around effect. I think they usually don't trigger off of themselves, which increases the playability of that card greatly. And then once again, I've heard many people talking about this card in Legacy because it triggers off of Force of Will and stuff like that. You have less degree of that in Modern. Like, it triggers off of Solitude and it triggers off of Fury.
Leyline Binding.
And the Leyline Binding. So you have basically... But I think those are all like... Those are the only 3 like playable pitch cards that you can trigger this card off of in an unfair way.
Yeah, and the fact is that if you think about it as a draw engine, like it's a cool thing that you can stack them. So the more you have them, the more cards you draw, the more you can play later, etc. So it's looking good in multiples, but the problem is that this card will fight for the card advantage slot with the One Ring, and the One Ring looks just much better. You don't need to jump through hoops to make it work.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
more
feel
of a like redundancy thing and on your one rings. I think in very like specific strategies. The one place I can see it being good is a pretty unplayable deck, which is the extra turns deck. Like getting an additional card on every time you cast is fairly strong because it just makes it more likely for you to keep chaining them. And this deck already is seeing some amount of play, very limited, to be fair, because of One Ring. Like a bunch of people trying to like have One Ring turns deck. And like mostly leagues and stuff, and it's not very successful, but it's something that people have been doing. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if with added card advantage engines for this deck, people would like to try it out even further.
True.
Okay, then we have Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is a legendary artifact for, I want to say, 2 mana, 2 colorless mana. And now I'm getting it on my screen, so now I know everything. It's 2 mana legendary artifact with you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. So it essentially fixes colors of mana for activated abilities. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is another static ability that doesn't make sense unless you read the last ability of the card. So very good order of abilities, Watsy. Obviously it makes sense because you put static abilities before you put activated abilities on cards in general, but still I like to point that out. And then it has an activate ability of tap, exile target card from a graveyard, and that part of exiling is not a cost, it's an effect on the resolution. The soul cost is tapping. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So at least Sodek has been in direct contact with certain high-profile Yawgmoth players that shall remain nameless for now, for the sake of their own privacy. If they want to come forward with their takes, they are invited to do so in the comments. I know that certain Polish Yawgmoth players likes to comment on videos on YouTube of Polish content creators. Once again, they shall remain nameless. There has been talks that this card is okay in Yawgmoth, basically. Might be okay in Yawgmoth.
That's a lot of text, and every time I read this card, I like get distracted, like while reading it, and I'm not pretty sure what the card is capable of. Like I read it like already like 10 times, and I still haven't seen all the lines it can create, but I heard that Yawgmoth players are maybe not excited, but are considering it.
Curious. They are curious about how it plays.
Yeah, my gut tells me that the card is like too many things has to go right to make it work, and it can be rather cute than powerful, but see, maybe there's something hidden here. Like the thing that you can do cool things with Greased, like your young wolf can activate Greased abilities, something like this is technically possible. So maybe there's something. If you really want to.
I think I'm not 100% sure if that's true. I think you might have to be a planeswalker to activate loyalty abilities. I think that might be in the rules, because I think there was a similar case of non-planeswalker type of card getting planeswalker's abilities in the past, and I don't think it's possible, but I might be wrong. I think that's specifically set in the rules that you can't activate loyalty abilities on non-planeswalker permanents.
I have no idea, and like I don't want to argue. Like
I'll just Google it very quickly, but you can keep talking about the card.
If the card shows up at your pre-release and someone will want to sell it for like $1 or $2, just grab it. Maybe it will be good later. When like I feel that the best way to learn what the card is capable of is just to play it on MTGO. Then MTGO will tell you what you can do and what you can't. Yes.
You actually can do that. When I
What?
googled, can you activate loyalty abilities from non-planeswalkers permanent? It says from comprehensive rule 606.3, a loyalty ability of a permanent can be still activated even if that permanent isn't a planeswalker. But even so, in general, only one loyalty ability of a permanent can be activated in a turn, and only once that turn.
Okay, so Young Wolf can be a Grist.
Yes, it looks like that way from Googling and finding a Reddit thread about it. So, do we trust Reddit? I personally don't trust Reddit at all, but it also had a link to, or maybe not a link, but it had listed the specific part of comprehensive rules of Magic, which I do trust. So, yeah, I will put my faith in Reddit for now, which I don't do lightly. Okay. And then we have the last card for Modern, which is Hearth Elemental. And the first adventure card in our list from this set. Hearth Elemental has the adventure called Stoke Genius for 1 and a red. So 2 mana, a very similar cost from Bonecrusher Giant, but it's a sorcery, not an instant. It discards your hand and then you draw 2 cards. So you may think, I used to play Hollow One and I liked Ox of Agonas, so this is kind of a Ox of Agonas. And then you read the actual elemental card, part of this card. It's a 6 mana elemental, 5 mana and 1 red. For a 4/5, with this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard that are instant cards, sorcery cards, and or have an adventure. So you think, it's kind of like Hollow One, because it can cost 1 mana. So maybe if you're so inclined, you can play this type of decks with this card. It can never cost 0, which kind of sucks, but...
Yeah, paying mana for things isn't the most exciting thing to do. Let's remember that we already have the effect of discard your hand, draw 2 cards. It was called Dangerous Swagger. It was an instant. It was unplayable in all modern decks. So many people asked already on Twitter when I posted this card, is it really good? And the reason is that, paying 1 mana for your 4/5 creature instead of not being able to do so is a difference in my opinion. What I like about like my first thought was that maybe it can be quite good in dredge, because 4/5 for 1 mana is kind of good. But also I heard that maybe Vengevine Hollow One decks can use it, or just Hollow One decks. Like the really cool thing is that this is an enabler that after it resolves, it can be cast as a creature. So it's easier to get to 2 creatures to cast Return Vengevines, which is in my opinion something you can miss, and it was kind of hard to return Vengevines repetitively in the past. So having this type of effects can be quite useful. Although, like discarding your whole hand means that you will lose all your other enablers you have in hand. So technically, these cards shouldn't be good in multiples, by obviously, but at least once you have your graveyard assembled, you can just cast 4/5 for 1 mana. So
I'm pretty sure that it counts itself if you cast it off of exile. With how rules of paying costs in Magic works. Because you cast it from an exile and you pay cost before you cast a card. So when you are paying cost for this card, it's still in the exile. So I think it's if you cast the adventure part of it, then it by definition costs at most 5 mana. I think that's how it works.
That's cool. I like it, to be honest.
That would be my intuition from the whole can you cast Black Lotus off of, or Frogmite off of just Black Lotus on the table thingy, which you can. I think it's in a very similar way. I think you can Half Elemental will cost 5 mana with it on adventure at least. I also just noticed I have very flavor cap for today. It's Snow White. It's basically Eldraine. You have dwarves, you have princesses, you have fairy tales. So I'm on theme.
Cool.
Sodek is not, because a yellow Vans shirt is not very it is not very Eldraine-ish.
Why not? Do you think that fairies are not wearing Vans in Eldraine?
Yes, because they are stupid. Because Vans is one of the best thing you can be wearing in general. Okay, moving on to Pioneer with this brief segment about beverages, cups, and fashion. So we have much more cards for Pioneer than we had for Modern. Some of them we'll group, some of them we'll talk about very briefly. I just put more cards on the list to just mention them, mostly for my sake. So if it turns out to be good, I want to be able to say, I told you so, it might be good, rather than anything else. So with that in mind, let's start with a card or group of cards that I don't think will be very good for now. But I want to be able to say, I told you so next year, because there is a decent amount of support for fairies in this set, but no super playable fairies in large quantities. But next year we are going back to Lorwyn. So you have those cards like, I think it's called Bitterlands or something like this. It's X black for an instant. It gets -X to target creature, and then an additional -3/-3 if you control a fairy when you cast this spell. So it's, if you have fairy on the table, it reads as XB -X+3 -X+3 to target creature, which is very Pioneer playable effect, I think. Also, we have card that's called something Drain.
Ego Drain.
Ego Drain, which sounds very similar to Eldraine, which I think is pretty nice. And it's basically a Thoughtseize, but instead of losing 2 life, if you don't control a fairy, you exile a card from your hand.
So if you don't control a fairy,
it's very bad.
It's super bad, but if you control a fairy, then it can be...
Then it's really good.
A better Thoughtseize slightly.
So yeah, a lot of those like cards that I think works well with fairies. Also Spell Stutter, not to confuse with Spell Stutter Sprite, which is 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 plus an additional 1 for every fairy you control as you cast this spell, probably, or maybe on resolution. I don't remember, but in general, it's a quench that's a mana leak with 1 fairy, and it gets much better with more fairies.
Yeah, so quite good.
So basically, if you like foil cards, just buy all of those, and next year when Maro gives us Bitter Blossom and Spell Stutter Sprite, we can just, all play fairies and everything will be fine and dandy, and we'll get Cryptic Command, and we'll get Thoughtseize Mutavault already legal. Yep, we'll just have time of our life.
Champion of Fairy then, and then Cryptic Commons, right? In my opinion, like the biggest problem with Fairy being an Pioneer archetype is that they will have to compete with Spirits, and Spirits are already one of the best, if not the best type in the format. So I'm quite skeptical if Fairies will see any play.
Just print Fairy Lavamancer. And
Fairy Lavamancer.
Like 1 black, and then it has tap ability of black, tap, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, and either gets -2/-2 to target creature or target opponent loses 2 life.
Yeah,
Easy.
and give it flash, okay?
And it's an O2. Perfect.
Okay, all good. So we'll see if Fairies will find a way in the next year. Okay, moving on to probably the most impactful card for Pioneer in this set. Please, Jędrek, don't waste us 15 minutes telling why it's so important. You have 5. Let's go.
I think it's not as important because otherwise people would know about it. Because even like week, I was like, yeah, now I'll wait to play Pioneer and Phoenix after Eldraine releases because then I will be able to play with Sleight of Hand. And my friends were like, oh, fuck, Sleight of Hand is in this set? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it was spoiled a month ago. Because it was spoiled during the PT with all those like panels and huge things and the PT. So they just snuck this lowly common into the set. And I'll just say that. Some of you know that there's a person out there, and his name is Ben Jones, my dear friend and exceptional Phoenix player. And Ben is one of the more restrained people that I know. Very reserved. He's not one for hot takes and very extreme opinions. But when he saw Sleight of Hand, he said, oh yeah, Phoenix will be broken now. So if Ben Jones said that Phoenix will be broken with Sleight of Hand, I believe him. And I will be casting those Sleight of Hands and those pigeons and those treasure cruises in Lille in 1 month from now, because Phoenix is already great and now it will be even better. And if you want to say, but Jędrek, what will you cut to include Sleight of Hand in your deck? Will it be Charter Course? I'll punch you in the face. I won't, because I'm not punching people in general, because I'm not a fucking barbarian. But don't cut Charter Course from your deck, okay? Please don't do that. You need ways to discard your Phoenixes. Charter Course is great. I don't know, cut a land. Cut 1 land. Maybe cut a Spell Pierce. I don't know how good... I don't know.
Give me a second. For every 2 cantrips you add to the deck, you can safely cut 1 land from the deck.
More or less, yes, exactly. Just like Alan Comer said in 1997. Yeah. And I think the biggest question for me is how playable Spikefield Hazard will be post Eldraine, because it's like, of course, they sorcery with a land on the backside, and like getting an option to grab a land with pieces of the puzzle is extremely valuable from time to time. But in general, the red backside of a land is getting worse and worse. If you have like 12 1-mana blue cantrips, you have triple blue temporal trespass. I think the only thing that saves Spikefield Hazard is the fact that if you want to fork the trespass, you have to pay 1 red mana for Galvanic Iteration anyway, so having 1 red land is not that bad. But I wouldn't be super surprised if people at least try to play some other double-faced cards if they want this like Sorcery Plus or like Instant Sorcery Plus plus backside land effect. But neither Jewelry Disruption nor Saloon Division sounds very appealing to me, so maybe not. Maybe we will just stick to playing like 1 or 2 Spikefield Hazards. Long story short, I have 2 more minutes that I won't use because I don't think there is much more to say. Sleight of Hand is great. Phoenix is great. Treasure Cruise is busted. If somebody tells you that Deadly Dispute is better than Treasure Cruise, they are crazy, and you can go to their stream and say, Kurwa, Canister, what are you talking about? That's not true. Do not call anybody out.
The one thing I want to add is that with yet another 1-mana cantrip, Think in the Ice is even better. Like it will be super trivial to flip early.
Both of your 2 drops, whether you want to play Thing in the Ice or Shredder gets better, but I think Thing in the Ice improves a bit more. And that's that's exactly the scenario in which you don't want to have non-blue lands in play because you want to cast like 4 cantrips in a row. And it's not super hard to cast 4 cantrips on 1 turn if you have 12 of them, plus the last one can pretty often be Treasure Cruise because your graveyard will be full enough. Yep. Okay, now I'll give the floor to Sodek when I go refill my beverages. And now we'll talk about manlands. So I'll first do the brief introduction, and then Sodek will talk about his favorite ones when I will be refilling mine. And then I come back and I said, Sodek, you are completely right. I agree with you as always. I value you as friend and human. and or I will say Sodek pierdolisz, and then I will say what I think is true. So there are 5 manlands in opposite colors. So of course, WotC gave us another Pioneer legal opposite color manland, and not friendly color manlands that we don't have in Pioneer because WotC hates us in general. Truth be told, those are, I think, on average, are much more exciting than Oath of the Gatewatch manlands that saw basically 0 play in Pioneer. I guess Shambling Vents saw some play, but very limited. And I think that those manlands, especially, I think the blue-red one is the best because it animates for only 2 mana, which is very cool. But yeah, I'll give floor to Sodek and I'll be right back.
Yeah, these lands are quite good. That's like it's hard to tell something more more insightful about them. Like it's good to have other options. Like Jędrek said, Restless Spy is quite good. Like animating for 2 mana and having the ability to keep like blue mana open for counters is quite good. I will try it in creativity, although like I'm kind of skeptical about having tapped lands because like I wanted to avoid them. But maybe can be quite good. The Scry one effect when you are searching for creativity is also actively nice. The other cards, I struggle to find home for them. Maybe in 5-color, 5-color incarnation decks, but it's hard to think about one.
I think not having basic land types and clashing with binding is a bit too much.
Yeah,
you don't want to play them then.
That's probably the biggest problem. Like I like Restless Fortress.
That's a white-black one?
Yeah, it's quite good at defense. You can attack, like you technically attack for free because 1 from power and toughness, and then you drain 2 and gain 2 life. So it's something that like it's super similar to Shambling Vent, but you get 1 extra point of toughness. But it also costs 1 more mana. So
and 1 more damage.
Yeah, and,
you deal 1 more damage.
Yeah, that's cool. I also like Restless Cottage because when it attacks, create a food token, so creating a game object out of a land can be quite good. Restless Bivouac. Bivouac. Hard to say.
Yes, there is a very similar word in Polish, bivak, and it's the same word.
Okay, quite good. Looks interesting at least, but having a tap land in the red-white aggressive decks is a disaster. So just because of being a tap land, I can't see it being played. Restless Winestock, also quite good. Like 5 mana, get a 5/5 with trample, and you make other creature bigger potentially. Up to 1 target creature. You can shrink opponent creatures, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's kind of cool. So maybe this stand can see play too. Like, it's good to have more options. I'm pretty sure they won't change the format drastically, but like having better mana and more options to use your mana for doing something is a good thing. Generally speaking.
Yeah, I think that creativity sounds like a good shell for Restless Spire because it's like, of course, you don't want taplands too much, but creativity is a deck that can afford taplands more than like Phoenix, for example. Like, I don't think, maybe you can play 1 in Phoenix, maybe, but I'm not entirely sure if you can. But yeah, those lands are definitely pretty nice, and I think the ones that have most potential are like Restless Spire is the best one on raid, but blue-red decks maybe don't want taplands too much. I've been thinking more of the green-black one. Maybe you have some green-black alternative to red-black midrange. Like in general, some black midrange decks might want to get those lands because they're pretty great. especially as Sodek said, I think the Restless Cottage is the most impressive in like the mid-range shells because it clocks well. It gives you this nice life buffer with foods. It's an incidental graveyard hate. It just does a lot of things. I think very traditionally, the worst one is the red-white one, which is very common for the cycle to be the worst one. But yeah, I think they are cool. And if they see play, I won't be super surprised.
Okay, let's go
Okay.
for
Sodek's favorite card ever, which is Witch Stalker's Frenzy or Witch Stalker Frenzy. It's an instant for 4 mana, 3 and a red, and it deals 5 damage to a creature. And then you may say, what? 4 mana, instant, 5 damage to a creature? That's super bad, Sodek. Why do you like this card? And then Sodek will say, but wait, it has also special ability. So it costs 1 mana less, 1 generic mana less for each creature that attacks this turn. And it's not creatures you control or creatures your opponents control. It's all creatures. So you can both cast it on offense and on defense. And potentially deal 5 damage to this fucking shield red for 1 mana. Which is something that red decks has been struggled with. I want to say forever, but it hasn't even been a year. So, you know.
yeah, I really like this is one of the 2 cards in this set that strongly supports going white. Like we'll later talk about the second one. The fact that it's quite flexible, and as long as the game is centered around combat damage, it will be just great. Like obviously, for instance, you would like to kill Adeline before the combat, but you can't have everything. After all, it's a white 1 mana 5 damage. It's a lot of damages. Sadly, in case of Cavalier, has 6 toughness, so it's a problem. But at least now you can kill Polukranos Reborn with it, so that's a cool thing in my opinion. Generally speaking, if there's a red aggressive deck that wants to go white, and I feel with the other card in the deck, it can be. The Witch Stalker Frenzy will be the best effect to clear the path for the smaller creatures. So I'm okay. Hyped is saying too much, but it's just a super solid effect, and the way to make it for 1 mana is at least it looks easy to get. And even if you pay for like 2 or even 3 mana, it's not the end of the world. So just super solid card, in my opinion.
That makes sense. Okay. Next card on our list is the card that I added, and it's The End. Very ominous name.
Really? Really?
So it's an instant for 4 mana, 2 and double black. It has a text that says this spell costs 2 less to cast if your life total is 5 or less. That I wouldn't focus on too much. I don't think that's the important part of the card. Its text is exile target creature or planeswalker. Search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as the permanent, and exile them. That player shuffles, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. So, do I think that this card is universally strong in every type of deck? Of course not. But I think for an archetype that has been on outskirts of Pioneer for a long time, which is blue-black-ish, like Wafo-Tapa type of decks, I think this effect is quite strong because it's like, it is an extraction effect, which is often ridiculed, but it's also a removal spell. So I can imagine it being very strong if you play against, for example, I don't know, Devotion, and they play Karn, you exile their Karn, and now suddenly they can't combo off. And they have to kill you with just, beats. And then, if you have enough time to play the second one or flashback it with Torrential Gearhulk, you exile their Cavalier of Thorns. They won't get a Cavalier trigger, and suddenly they don't have any Cavaliers in their deck. And their deck is Polukranos's and trolls. And if you get one of those, well, suddenly their deck is just empty. It's just mana. So I think it's just a good way for those type of decks to get rid of important permanents in those matchups. It's also quite good against Arclight Phoenix. You get one Arclight Phoenix, you get all of them. You get one, I don't know, what's other type of card like that. But
it's also an instant, so it can exile Worldspine Worm, for example.
yes,
So
you can exile Worldspine Worm. You can, I don't know, you are playing against 4-color Omnath or the Bring to Light deck, and you exile all of their Omnaths, so suddenly they have.
exiling all of Mayhem Devils also looks fine, in my opinion.
Yes, like it's just it looks like an extraction effect at first, but I think it will play out much better than it. It's not, of course, a 4-off by any means, but
Exiling all Grease Funks?
yes, we can dunk on Grease Funk further. That's what I dream about the most, so deck ever. But yeah, and you can even, if they animate their Esika's Chariot, you can exile Esika's Chariot and get rid of all of Esika's Chariots, stuff like that, Parhelions, whatever. And yeah, I think this card will have the potential to see play in like slower control decks, because I don't think it's out of this world to try things like Raska's Contempt and stuff like that. Before we saw like both Raska's Contempt and E2 Extinction being played to some extent in Pioneer decks at some point, and it's just a similar effect in terms of mana efficiency, and I think the upside of it is much higher than gaining 2 life or something like that. Okay. The next card on our list is Moonshaker's Cavalry, which is basically a white Craterhoof Behemoth, which is 5 and triple white, so 8 mana, but I don't think if it sees play in Pioneer, I don't think anybody will pay this cost for it. It's a 6/6 with flying, and it has a triggered ability of when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain flying and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So what it is basically Craterhoof Behemoth for elves if they want it. You have Court of Calling, you can court for it. Maybe you have some other go white. Maybe you have some white tribal decks with a lot of creatures and Nykthos, and you Nykthos it out. I don't know. I'm not saying that I'll see this card in my next Pioneer tournament. What I'm saying is that it's an option that's fairly unique that we didn't have access to in Pioneer before. And that's it, basically.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's a card for Commander, not for Pioneer, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, Craterhoof Behemoth saw a lot of play in its day.
It had haste. Like imagine like Craterhoof Behemoth could just KO by itself, right? And this can't. This is a huge difference in my opinion.
Sure, but giving flying means that if you have like 1 or 2 other creatures to attack, it usually will punch through more damage.
If you have 1 or 2 other creatures, yes. If you don't, for instance, you can't, for example, pay a huge convoke cost to. For example, it won't be a finisher in elves. Like you could.
Well, if you have some untap effects, it can be.
Technically, we'll see. Like I'm not a believer of this card, but like the text on it looks powerful, and maybe there's a shell to
it might be more of a white tribal Nykthos card than elves card, but we'll see. Okay, next up on our list is second favorite card of Sodek of all time, which is Imodane's Recruiter. It's a creature, human knight for 20 red, a 2/2. When Imodane's Recruiter enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. So it's that priced second coming of Bushwalker that Sodek wanted for Convoke. It also has an adventure part, which is Train Troops for 5 mana, 4 and 1 white, Sorcery Adventure. create 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance. So it lets you refuel in the late game. It's a bushwalker. Sodek, tell us why this is the best card ever, or second best card ever.
Like previously, we had Goblin Bushwalker as a way to as a reward for going white, and I was searching for another similar effect, and the only thing I could find was Regal Liozor, which was much worse because it could be blanked by a removal. Recruiter has some upsides and downsides compared to Bushwalker. The biggest downside is that you can't play it for 2 mana because like of Regel's Bushwalker Search, but it will be much better from the top because you don't need to play another spell to make it good. By itself, it attacks not for 2 but for 3 damage, which is quite good, and in extreme late game you can create even more power from it. So I would like to like the easiest way to build the deck to incorporate this card into Pioneer deck is to add it to Convoke and play like 5 or 6 Reckless Bushwalker effects and like kill more often without the unique of Convoke at all, but to kill with just a bunch of creatures and attacking with them. Maybe there's also for example, a mono red deck or red black deck or red white deck that can go very white, and like you create a lot of different tokens. You have 8 Bushwalker effects now. You have which Stalker Frenzy as a removal nowadays. So there's an option to just go super white, super fast, and kill the opponents out of nowhere. And you have enough cards to execute this game plan more often than not. So in my opinion, the card is quite good, and we'll see play in one way or another.
Very impressive card, for sure.
True.
Okay, next up on our list is an amalgamation of removal spells with adventure. That maybe some of them will be playable, maybe not. So I think that both Sadek and I agree that the most promising one is Virtue of Persistence, which is a 7-mana enchantment on the non-adventure side. So every color has one Virtue mythic rare enchantment with 2-mana adventure. And the black one is... the enchantment on its own is 5 black. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, which is an effect known from the card Debtor's Kneel. That's very popular in Commander, apparently. Or at least it was when I played the format many moons ago. But its adventure part is Locthwain Scorn. Sorcery, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, you gain 2 life. Which is a fairly defensible removal spell. If it was an instant, it would be very good, I think.
If it was an instant, it would be an easiest one of the top picks for Pioneer, in my opinion. The fact it's a sorcery means that it's a cost adding it to the deck, but also the reward of having, like, for example, 1 copy of this to just make sure that you have something to do with mana in the late game is probably
I think
worth
it's definitely a card that can be played in the fabled aforementioned blue-black control deck that I mentioned already before. This type of effect, you have some ways to incidentally win the game after you establish control. Okay, next up we have Farsight Ritual, which is an instant for 4 mana, 2 and double blue. It has Bargain, and it looks at the top 4 cards of your deck. You choose 2 of them and put them into your hand, rest on the bottom random order. And if you bargain it, it looks at 8 cards. It's like, I can easily imagine a deck in which, like, Memory Deluge is a strong enough effect to see Pioneer play, and I can imagine the deck which will have easier time getting something to bargain than to get to 7 lands. And then
Just can send us for example.
yes, for example. And looking at 8 cards is a lot of cards. So
Yeah, but on the other hand, we already have dig through time in the format. So what's the reason of adding the only upside of having memory deluge was the flashback that you can see more cards and you can get more cards from.
well, if your
this
deck
one
is
effect.
not very good at filling out your graveyard, I think that's a good.
Sadly,
good
Ascendancy
thing.
is so.
Yeah,
So
maybe some other deck. I don't know.
Maybe
There is
I feel there are better options, like to do very similar thing. But it's good to
keep it in mind.
Yeah.
Maybe you have some Wizards tribal that will play their all cards and will use it. Who knows?
For sure,
Okay.
for sure.
Then we have Horned Log Whale, which is another blue-black control potentially card. It's a creature with the adventure part as well. The adventure part is Lagoon Breach. Instant. The owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on top or bottom of their library. So it's basically a 2-mana removal spell of sorts. A pretty shitty removal spell, but it works like in a pinch. It just gets rid of something that attacks you. And its creature part is 6 mana for a flash with ward 6/6 with ward 2, and it enters the battlefield tapped unless it's your turn. So it's just like this split card of I clear the board, and then when I'm ready, I flash it in the end of turn if I don't have to counter anything, and then I start killing my opponent with it. Just nothing super exciting, but if like this is fairly often the type of card that you kind of want in those decks. I'm not saying it will see play, but it might.
Yeah, it's like a card that you can put as a one-off in your deck. The cool part of it is that it doesn't force the card to die, so it's obviously good versus effects like Cavalier of Thorns or something like this. So
extremely good against Cavalier of Thorns. Extremely good.
Maybe that's the way to make it happen, but again, I'm skeptical. We'll see.
Okay, when we are on the topic of cards that Sodek is skeptical of, the next one is Sleep Cursed Fairy.
Yeah.
Which is a blue fairy for 1 blue mana. 3/3 flying ward 2. And then you think, what? Flying ward 2, 3/3 for 1 mana? It's super broken. It's better than Wild Nakat, a once banned card in Modern. What's happening? But it also enters the battlefield tapped with 3 stuns counter on it. Stun counters, if it would become untapped, remove a stun counter from it instead. And then it has an activate ability of 1 blue untapped Sleep Cursed Fairy. So it has 3 stun counters. In the hypothetical situation, you played on turn 1, on turn 2 you remove your first stun counter, and you pay 2 mana for it. On turn 3 you remove your last stun counter, so it untaps on turn 4 for the first time. Is it impressive?
Wow.
Not really. But like, I'm not saying this card will be playable right now or that I see a deck in which it would be good, but I think the problem with those type of cards, like undercosted beaters with drawback that you have to work for, often was that, okay, you work for this drawback, you pay those mana or you wait those turns, and then your opponent spends 1 mana to kill it. Because it has ward 2, it's harder to just get rid of it incidentally. You have to pay at least 3 mana to get rid of it, and usually it will be more than 3 mana because not many 1 mana cards kills it in Pioneer. And I can just see it being like, oh, I played on turn 1, and then on turn 2, I hold up my counter spell, and if I don't use it, then I will spend 2 mana for it, and then I will do it again on turn 3, and at some point I will just start attacking with it. If you draw it later on, then you can maybe remove 2 counters on 1 turn, and then it will be fairly soon ready to attack. And like, because its sizing is fairly impressive, like 3/3 flying ward 2 is a pretty decent body in the mid game as well. It's not like it's a 1-drop that you have to work for, and that if you top deck later in the game, the creature part of it is outmuscled very easily. Free flyer is an okay stat line. So I don't know. I think this card has a fair amount of potential that might be materialized, might not be. We'll see what happens.
You know what I think about now? It's a very cheap fairy with ward 2 that's hard to kill, so you make sure that your cards that rely on having fairy
That's true.
Will be good.
That's true.
Maybe that's the saving grace for the card, because otherwise I feel it's too clunky and too slow.
Yeah, turn 1
to
you play
matter.
this, turn 2 you play fairy Thoughtseize and fairy -3 fairy disfigure, and you hold up your spell stutter, and then you do everything, and then you play Bitter Blossom.
Bitter Blossom, yeah.
Yes. Because
yeah, maybe that's the thing. Yeah, that's the way to play this card as a card that makes sure that your conditional cards will always be quite good, and later in the game it will switch.
It's also a wizard,
into...
so it's a wizard for Wizard's Retort, which is the wizard counterspell. That hasn't really been played in Pioneer.
Counter burn, you say?
Maybe. Who knows?
Counter burn. For me, counter burn was the definition of the bad idea. Like if you want to be,
you know what counter burn is? Counter burn is when you
just be a burn.
When you level up your wizard in Baldur's Gate 3, and then you have the third level of spells, and then you pick counterspell and fireball. That's counter burn. That's what our friend Jacek told me.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, moving forward. Wrangle's Prank. What is this? I have no idea.
Wrangle's Prank is a 4-mana sorcery. Choose any number, or choose one or more, maybe. Choose one or more. Yes. Each player discards 2 cards. Each player loses 4 life. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Basically, I can very easily imagine that it's a Wrath of God effect in like mid-range mirrors when you have like 2 creatures. Or like your opponent has 2 creatures, you don't have creatures, you just cast it for 4 mana and say, sacrifice your Bonecrusher Giant and your Shieldred, or sacrifice your Graveyard Trespasser and your Shieldred, and then I don't have to discard 2 ward. Or even I have 1 more card in hand only and your opponent has 2, so also we will both discard a card, or 2 cards, and then it's suddenly like a 3-for-1 effect. I think it was a very good way to level up the playing field in mid-range mirrors. On top of that, if you have if the creatures that you sacrifice has some way of getting back from the graveyard, that's the additional value, but I wouldn't look too much into it as a baseline. I think the baseline is I have no creatures, my opponent has 2 creatures, I kill both of them for 4 mana. Just 4 mana, kill 2 creatures, which is a strong effect if we are paying 3 to 4 mana for our creatures.
Yeah, it's a really good card to come back from
exactly
when you're behind. That's it.
Or because if your opponent has 4 life and you have more than 4 life.
Yes. Okay, Spiteful Hexmage. The only Hexmage are value highly is Vampire Hexmage. So let's see.
Spiteful Hexmage is a 1 black for a 3/2 human warlock. When Spiteful Hexmage enters the battlefield, create a cursed roll attached to target creature you control. Her cursed roll turns a creature into something with base power and toughness 1/1. So it's something that I already talked about, of rolls being game objects to sacrifice or to play with in some other ways. So this is basically a black Traben Inspector, give or take. That's what my favorite podcaster Alex said, and I kind of see it. If you are playing a sacrifice deck and you can play it on turn 1, or play another 1-drop on turn 1, then you play this on turn 2, put the roll on the 1-drop that you want to sacrifice anyway, like Cauldron Familiar or whatever. Or there is this 0-1 with backup from War of the Spark that can sacrifice to draw a card. like in general, like if you have somebody to put the role on or some way to utilize the role itself, it's a fairly impressive like beater. 1 mana 3/2 is okay.
Yeah, it's like Delver of Secrets without having to flip something. And without
It's
flying
Blood Tide
too fast.
Harvester. And
Even
we all
more.
know how much damage Blood Tide Harvester can produce.
Yeah, true.
Very surprising
maybe-
sometimes.
Maybe I underestimated this card. Maybe like if there's a cute way to use the enchantments, maybe this card can be quite powerful. Like I would like to see it a 3/3, not a 3/2. But it could be like too much for the 1-drop. Because
Yeah,
this
we-
2 power means that it will quite often trade with another 1-drop. That's 2/1.
You can't have everything, Sodek.
True.
Can't have everything.
True.
Okay. Then we have Tangled Colony. Continuing the trend of 3/2s in black. It's a rat, 3/2 for 1 and a black. It can't block, and when it dies, it creates X 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this creature can't block, where X is the amount of damage dealt to it this turn. So basically, for a long time now, people have been trying different 2-drops in red black, and I can imagine sometimes if you want to be on much more aggressive side of things, I can see this being a good 1-drop, a good 2-drop to complement Blight Harvester, to have more free power 2-drops that you can just attack with, that present some value later on. Like it's nothing super amazing. Or if you play like mono black midrange, or if you want to play green black with the new Manland or something like that, and you can't play Blood Tide Harvester, this is your 2 mana free power 2-drop that can leave something behind when it dies.
Yeah, the
knows?
problem is that it gives rats only if it was dealt damage. Right?
Yes.
The amount of damage dealt to it this turn. So it would be nice to have this type of card that when it dies, it creates like at least one token, because you could try to play it with like Mayhem Devils or like the Sacrifice Engine. And this wording means that it basically needs to be killed in combat, and it can't block, so opponent has an option to either not block or just prepare for the upcoming incoming rats, or it has to be killed with damage-based removal.
Which is the most popular group of removal in Pioneer, for what it's worth.
Kinda, yes, but also, Fatal Push exists, right? So-
Sure. But if your 2-drop gets killed by Fatal Push, it's not terrible.
True. It's better to have a 2-drop killed than a 4-drop. That's true, but I feel it will be a cool card in Standard, maybe. Not
Maybe. Who knows? We'll see.
Not in Pioneer. Okay.
Just pointing that out so I don't get any regrets later on. Then up we have Charming Scoundrel, which is a 1/1 haste for 1 and a red. Human Rogue. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1. Discard a card and draw a card. Create a treasure token. Or create a wicked roll token attached to target creature you control. So, at the very least, this is a 2/2 haste for 2 that when it dies, it deals 1 damage to your opponent. That's the baseline of this card. And then it has a drawback of being killable by deal 1 effects for a second. Like Spikefield Hazard and stuff similar to that. But in general, 2/2 haste for 2 is a raid that red decks are somewhat interested in fairly often. And it also can do other things. Like if you are playing your red deck, for example, that's like kind of small ball and aggressive game 1, you can play it as a 2/2 haste. And then if you transform into something with more like Planeswalkers for 4 mana or Showdown of the Skulls or more expensive card, you can play it as a 1/1 haste that creates a treasure, so it accelerates you to your top end.
Yeah, Willy Goblin was played in Constructed.
Yes, like it's just a very versatile card in that matter that can do numerous small things that can amount to being just good enough to see play.
True. Again, in my opinion, the last 5 cards are not good enough, but Jędrek somehow added it to the list.
Yeah.
I just don't see it being good enough for again. Maybe in constructed in standard it can be quite good, but not in pioneer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't be super surprised to see any of those cards being playable in Pioneer in the next year. Maybe with some other printing. Some of them needs either printing or
bit more
conditions
support,
to
maybe.
just be playable. Okay. Next up we have Bramble Familiar, which is a mana dork for 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 that taps for green, and it has an ability of 1 colorless, 1 green, tap, discard a card to return Bramble Familiar to its owner's hand. And it has the adventure part, fetch quest for 6 mana, sorcery adventure, mill 7 cards, then put a creature, enchantment, or land among the milled cards into the battlefield. So it's like somewhat similar to Storm the Festival. Obviously, it's much worse than Storm the Festival, but it's like a mana dork and a payoff for those type of decks if you want more of that. It's not a very good payoff and not a very good mana dork, but maybe having the option of be both in one card is just what you want to like. You want to like fudge the numbers a bit, and you want to have, I want to have one more mana dork in my deck, and I also want one more payoff in my deck, but I only have one slot in my deck. What do? Well, I play this card maybe. Who knows?
Okay, Brave the Wilds, another one.
Brave the Wilds, also a card that my favorite podcaster Arilax mentioned on CFB recently. It's a bargain card for 1 green mana sorcery. The baseline is you search for a basic land card, reveal it, put into your hand, and shuffle, which is an effect that has a fairly long pedigree of being somewhat playable in different formats. With some upsides, like Attune the Ether was playable, of course, in Energy. Traverse the Elvenwald is somewhat playable in some formats. And if it was bargained, target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste that's still a land. So what basically this card does is it allows you to double spell in mid-game. So for example, if you have some token laying around on turn 4, you can play this to get a 3/3 and play like a 3-drop. And then suddenly you have 2 things. You've made 2 meaningful plays on one turn, which can let you pressure opposing like Planeswalkers or Life Total against lower decks, or stabilize against creature decks. Like for example, play against green, they turn 4 play Karn, minus Karn to 3, you play this, kill their Karn and do something else. You're playing against an aggressive deck, you play this to have a 3/3 blocker, and then you do something else. It's just a card that can slot well into your mana curve, and spending mana efficiently is a good thing for a mid-range deck to do. That's it.
Okay, next one, Tough Cookie.
Tough Cookie, which is almost a gingerbread. It's a 2 mana 2/2 artifact creature food golem. When Tough Cookie enters the battlefield, create a food token, so you already get 2 game objects. It has 3 mana. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature until end of turn. So if you really need to clog your opponent, you can play this on 2. On turn 3, pay 3 mana, make your food token a 4/4 and attack for 6. Just from its own. So for example, I can imagine playing some sort of mid-range deck that plays this card. You're playing against, I don't know, Lotus Field, and you just want to kill them as soon as possible. You play this on 2, on 3 you attack for 6. And then it has 2 tap, sacrifice Tough Cookie, you gain 3 life like every food card ever, basically. Just once again, if we see some sort of like green black mid-range deck, I can see this card being playable in it. Who knows?
Okay. The Iron Crack. Okay, that's finally an interesting one to talk about.
The Iron Crack is The first ever, I think, Pioneer legal untapped 2-mana mana rock. Which is it's a 2-mana legendary artifact that taps for colorless, and that's it,
Wow.
basically.
Wow.
It has whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have the Iron Crack become a legendary equipment artifact named Everflame Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains equip 3 and equip creature gets +3/+3 and loses all other abilities. Wow, I thought this effect lasts only until the end of turn and it's permanent. Okay, I don't think it changes much.
You know what I'm thinking about?
I don't know what you are thinking about.
I will tell you. Is Seer legal in Pioneer? I think yes,
Seer?
right?
Yes.
Maybe this is the card that will help Eldrazi.
Maybe. We have a
Like Seer is a powerful card, and I haven't seen it play.
no,
Mostly because
really?
yes, only because it can't be cheated into play.
Accelerated.
Yeah, accelerated is the better word. And with the Iron Crack, maybe there's a way. And are there any legendary Eldrazi's? I think they are. But
They are Ulamog and
expensive.
Kozilek
Yeah,
and Emrakul.
they're expensive ones, right? With the cheaper ones, you could in the mid game exchange the Iron Crack into an equipment to win combats.
Yeah, but it's like you won't build your Eldrazi deck to be colorless. It will have at least one color probably, so you can just have like legendary creatures of that color. Like I don't know, maybe you can play mono black Eldrazi deck and you have Shieldred, whatever.
Nice. But I would probably play something cheaper. But generally speaking,
what Shieldred like playing 4 drops is exactly what you want with 2-mana rock, right? You play your 4 drop on turn 3.
This is an important part to play this. Also, there's one deck that really likes this type of effect. It's Giruda.
Hiruda.
Giruda.
If you are Espanol, it's Hiruda.
Hiruda. Okay, Hiruda. Like the deck is filled with 4 drops and then a 6 drop, and tries to go off as fast as possible. And they already played like Sylvan Caryatids, stuff like that. They also played Photos here. I saw one version with it. So maybe just having yet another effect that gives you mana and can be killed easily compared to other 2-mana mana guys. There's something there that can be quite good in the deck. There are also legendary creatures there. No, there's something there.
Maybe.
No.
Okay. As we are getting to the end of our list, we have 2 honorable mentions. Even though I don't know why we are doing honorable mentions anymore, because we are not ranking the cards.
After you added a bunch of semi-playables from standard, I feel that they should be not.
No, but in general, like if we are not ranking cards from 1 to 10 and then adding honorable mentions, why do you even call them honorable mentions rather than just cards on the list? But
like for me, it was adding honorable mentions, like they are underpowered compared to the rest cards from the list, but they can get some attention later.
Okay, listen up. The Sodex one is Lich Knight's Conquest, which is 5 mana, 4 and a black for a sorcery, and basically it mass bargains and mass reanimates. So sacrifice a number of artifacts, enchantments, and/or tokens. Return that many creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield.
What can I say? It's too bad it costs 5 mana, so I can't fetch it with Besiege the Mirror and cast it, which
and
is
you can't play it in Hiruda.
Yeah, so super unfortunate. But in my opinion, it's technically possible to build a self-me reanimator deck with like mana rocks and effects that will mill you, and you just like there are no restrictions what you want to return, etc. I feel I can safely say that there are some combinations of cards that they would end the game instantly if you return, for example, 2 or 3 creatures.
Like the Silver Exarch and Gigi-Jiki.
For instance. But like you have to find them. So
I just told you 2
technically,
creatures. What the fuck?
okay. Technically, I feel that it will be possible to create a deck that will like mass reanimate into combo kills.
Or 6 Siege Rhinos.
Yes, or 4 Siege Rhinos and 2 clones, 2 Siege Rhinos, to make it legal.
Or 4 High Fey Negotiators. Oh no, it's because it has bargain and bargain only triggers or only applies on to cast spells. So no.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay, like I see a combo potential here, and I won't be surprised if someone will try to go 2-2 at FNM with it.
And that someone's name is Tomasz Sodomirski.
Maybe, who knows?
Okay, last card on our list is my honorable mention, which is A Tale for the Ages. It's an enchantment for 2 mana, 1 and a white. And it has static ability of enchanted creatures you control gets +2/+2. So, rolls are enchantments. Creatures with rolls are enchanted creatures. +2/+2 is a very significant bonus.
+2/+2 for 2 mana.
Yes,
Like,
we saw Tempered Steel many years ago being very good for 3 mana.
Yeah.
We saw Flowering of the White Tree being semi-playable in Modern, and Pioneer is much less powerful than Modern. I wouldn't be super surprised to see somebody coming up with A Tale for the Ages deck in Pioneer. The reward is worth it.
Yeah, there's also we can think about other enchanting effects that are outside of playing roles. Maybe there's something that can be quite good there. Probably not Boggles, because there's like you don't want to, like, the anthem effects are good if you go white or have a lot of creatures.
Like at the very least, this is like a 2 mana +2/+2 for your Boggle, which is not insane.
Yeah, maybe with cartouches.
But if you have like
creatures,
exactly, if you have cartouche and then if you pump 2 creatures, so you have pump +4/+4 total for 2 mana, I think that's okay.
Armor pumps for even more, but yeah.
But you can only play 4 of them.
True, that's true. That's the biggest problem of Boggles. You can only play 4 good cards for the deck. Yeah,
Alright.
but yeah, maybe that's something here.
That is it, I think. So, overall, Wilds of Eldraine, not very impressive for constructed Magic, I think. But maybe we are underestimating them, just like people underestimated the first Eldraine set many years ago. By many years ago, I mean 4. Which is kind of crazy that Oko only happened 4 years ago. But
Like, it felt like it was yesterday. Okay,
what?
maybe.
It felt like it was 10 years ago.
No, on the other, like, I feel that
Dobra, Sodek,
Uro was super close.
okay. So yeah. Our next event coming up is Lille. There's a regional qualifier for Europe in Lille in 5 weeks from now. Yeah. 4.5
Pioneer,
weeks. Right? 4.5 weeks. Pioneer, yes. Sodek is going. I am going. We'll try to not scrap out and get our Pro Tour Chicago qualifications. And then we usher into the modern season. Like, we have some RCQs coming up in the next few weeks as well. But after Lille, Pioneer won't be on our minds for a prolonged period of time, probably, because we have some LMS events in Europe in Modern that at least I will be going to. I don't know how Sodek is.
Think about it.
Sodek will think about it. And then at the very least, we have the next regional championship after Lille is Ghent in January, and that one is Modern.
True.
So, yep. That's it, Sodek. Is there anything you want to add on top of that?
No, I said everything about cards.
Everything. Okay, great. So now you know everything because Sodek said everything. And yeah, as always, thanks for watching our content. Links are in the description down below. Twitter, Twitch streams, website, whatever you want to find is there. And we'll see you back at some point in the next few weeks with our first post PT lot, post preordain unban modern tier list. Yes, with all the numbers and data that we love so much. So thanks, take care, have fun at your pre-release, and bye bye.
See ya.